Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle. Me, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. We're talking about a new book today, series 121. A rather interesting book by a well-known author and written at a very interesting time in history. Messengers of Deception. Jacques Vallée's UFO Contacts and Cults. I mentioned many times in my videos that I believe that I can connect the beings, entities mentioned in the Bible, and also the hieroglyphics in Egypt, and even in Ecuador, Eric von Donovich, the gold of the gods, the image is there on his 3-foot-tall gold tablets. You can look up my video. I made a video on Eric von Donovich's, I'll be saying his name wrong, Daniken. Sorry about that. But I'm connecting the dots, and I think these are the people behind the New World Order, the New Age, basically some kind of new paradigm. I'm aware, and if a lot of people out there are not, they should be, but it seems there's plenty of evidence to show that the technology that we have been fed in the last 100 or so years comes from these very entities, beings. I came up with a common denominator when I was studying on dowsing, divining, how to use wooden rods and forks to find water, minerals. Just an interest of mine in my pursuit to find alternate energies, rationally thinking, instead of nuclear power and gas and oil and coal. It had always been an interest of mine. Anti-gravity. So when I started my research many years ago, a lot of it was in the New Age materials, holistic healing, crystals. I was a practical person. I spent 10 years working for a major aerospace company, working on projects with related electronics to the B-1B bomber, F-18 jets, space shuttle, satellites in space, and so many more. An engineering electronic technician, mostly involved in research and development projects with some very smart guys. I was the tech guy. These guys came up with the ideas. I had to build it. I was in the nuts and bolts and transistors and resistors and PC boards and hand wiring and all that stuff. I had a good knack for it. They used to call me, as crazy as it seems, a miracle technician. They said I could touch a computer system and it would fix itself. Of course, that's not the case. You just have to learn how to configure the thing the way the documentation says it needs to be configured and all that stuff. Pay attention to details. So anyways, I came across a little unknown fact, but a lot of the famous people, Michelangelo, Isaac Newton, Edison, Einstein, the common denominator, Nikola Tesla, and so many more. I kept coming across this. They had certain psychic abilities when they were young. Usually, 75-80% of the cases, their fathers were ministers or people of the church praying, communicating with the divine. Get it? Got it? Or getting hit in the head, a limb falling from a tree or a rock hitting them or something hitting them in the head, which altered something in the brain, maybe some kind of blood flow to the pineal gland. And they had this awakening. So we all know for a couple thousand years it was horses and buggies and not really a lot of advanced technologies for a couple thousand years, since Jesus' time, 2,000 years beyond that. I think some of the greater advancements were probably in the Dark Ages and before that. Those people who could build castles and even drainage systems and stuff like that, agricultural watering systems. But somewhere around the 1800s, some of this information was fed to humanity. You know, we started out with metalworks and the train, and finally the radio, the TV, the computer, and it just went like this, spiraled up into a tangent curve. Here's 4,000 years, and all of a sudden, shh. So statistically speaking, I don't think humanity had an epiphany and just all of a sudden became a genius. I think there were some outside forces trying to bring this about. Why at that time? I don't know. There are different theories about the cycle of humanity, of Earth, going from rising up to a plateau of genius and great abilities and then descending into the depths and rising again. The yoga something. I've made a video on that. One of the books, to get that book and show it. Kali Yuga. Anyways, so I keep thinking there's something behind all this. Okay, so we got two choices if there's something behind the ascent to this technological advancement that's happened in the last 100+ years. Divine inspiration fed from the world of what we as humans perceive as the God world and angels. Number one. Number two, the Galactic Federation. You know, whether they're Palladians or reptilians or blue avians or reptoids or tall whites or gray aliens. These, beings from other planets, much more advanced than we humans with their intergalactic spaceships. So that's choice number two. And choice number one in the Bible, it mentions the Watchers, and then they also called the Archons, the Nephilim. Book of Enoch mentions it, the Bible mentions it, the ancient hieroglyphs over there in Egypt and Babylonia, the Anunnaki aliens, Planet X, Nibiru, Nemesis, angels, demons, pixies, all kinds of strange mythology. And of course there's the story of about Atlantis and other lost continents and civilizations, the Nordics, Thor, Hyperborea north of Germany, Mu over there in the Pacific. So it does seem logical to anybody who's done any research or reading, even the biblical story of Noah and the Ark. It does seem that there was a highly advanced civilization prior to the Great Flood, according to my research and other people. And of course the Great Flood wiped a lot of that out, just like if we had a nuclear winter tomorrow, they had a nuclear war. I mean, how many people know how to turn grain into a flour so you can make bread into flour, or purify water, or build even a septic system, an outhouse, or whatever. hunt meat and cure it and keep it for months at a time. And vegetables. How many people have a clue about any of that stuff today? I'm here to tell you now, not too many people know too much about that stuff. Just a very interesting, perplexing problem. If something did happen to shut down the system, some gigantic flare from the sun wiped out all the computers and electronics, and people went into a frenzy and chaos and anarchy prevailed, what do people know? How would they survive without electricity, without the bathroom, the sewer system, without the processed food down at the grocery store? Fast food chain stores would be gone. So anyways, somebody's introduced these technological knowledges. And even Nikola Tesla would go on stage when he was older and he said, I'm not the genius you think I am. I have visions, I hear voices, I see things. And his handlers would run up there and pull him off the stage. So like I said, it seems to me that there's this other world, some other veil. You know, we can only see a small percentage of the electromagnetic spectrums. Let's say it's from this end of the screen all the way over here to the speed of light, down to voice, audio that we can hear with our ears. But only a small little portion can we actually see with our eyes. So all this is we can't see. All this we can't see. So there could be angelic beings behind me, sending rays down from the sun. So I thought, I'd have a conversation. Some people believe in God. Some people don't believe in God. Some people believe they have a soul. Some people don't believe they have a soul. A lot of people don't know what to believe. So I make these videos and kind of share my thoughts. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I do feel we as humanity, that we are under a threat right now. I think it's kind of self-obvious. I mean, the government leaders are even saying the words globalization, New World Order. They play this mind game with us. Economic destruction. Alan Greenspan even said to Congress during some hearings on the economy that they were running a program called Creative Economic Destruction. Interestingly enough, when I first found that, I printed it out and saved it. It's in my huge archives somewhere. But since I went back to find those exact words, all I could find was they were running a program called Economic Destruction. I couldn't find the Creative Economic Destruction. It's interesting. So for some reason, they were pulling down the economy. And it does cause a lot of stress on people, distraction, depression, it ruins families. And since these elite peoples, if they are 100% human DNA, that's another conversation. But apparently it's part of this Illuminati and secret society cults, whether it is really reptilians or just cast out angels called Watchers. Apparently in the book of Enoch, the Watchers were here on this planet back in thousands of years ago or more to assist humanity. But according to what I've read, they started using humanity for their own goals and aims, like where it says in the book of Enoch or where else, these angelic beings, these watchers, found the human women fair. They were attracted to them, and even took them as wives and mated with them. This is all biblical. You can look it up in the Bible. And created some offspring called Nephilim. And apparently mixing divine DNA with human DNA and can create some kind of grotesque beings or giant beings. And apparently the sexual prowess of these watcher beings extended even into the animal kingdom, whether they were experimenting guess what somebody could say maybe with the Zachariah Stitchin's material with the Anunnaki from Planet X, which is supposed to come by Earth. And when it passes, it changes the poles of the Earth, makes the Earth turn over or something, causing great destruction on the planet, destroying civilization as we know it. Is all that just some kind of propaganda? Some kind of mind control? Is there some kind of intentional paradigm shifting? Do they want people to not believe in God anymore? Do they want people to not pray anymore? Remember, these people who were divinely inspired with these technological advances and knowledge, which we call geniuses, I've tracked down that they were psychic and had special abilities when they were young, and I tracked that back to their parents or whatever when they were associated with religious associations praying. So they were using the pineal gland. And in the Bible, throughout hundreds of years, thousands of years, whatever, we have prophets, Jesus the Messiah, Muhammad, the leader of the Islamic religion, the prophet, Buddha, in the Hindu religion, Krishna. Gotta remember all these names. And the shamanistic activities in Peru, Ecuador, the Mayans. They have all these interesting looking hieroglyphics or stone monuments in their history. So again, do we have one, divine intervention, or two, the Galactic Federation, or the reptoids, or the insectoids, or the Orions, or the Palladians, and so many other names? I have a lot of books on the UFO issue. And I'm now focusing a little bit more of my energies on the popular topic of channeling. And apparently these different beings giving people certain information or making people think they went for rides in spacecraft. Corey Good, David Wilcock, and so many others are talking about it. So I thought, we need to dwell on that, think on that, read a few books, and try to figure it out. Because obviously the people who control our planet are taking serious advantage of the rest of us. The symbolism, the TV programming, it's this, seemingly to me, it's this God world versus this anti-God world. The Luciferian doctrine, Helena Blavatsky, the secret doctrine, the Kabbalah with the historic religion of the Jewish peoples, and then of course the Khazarians adopting Judaism as its religion. A whole country the size of the Ukraine or half of Russia. The maps changed over the years, but they were a very serious barbaric people, the Khazarians, and they were between the Byzantines, the Christians over by Rome and Turkey, Greece. And on the other side was north of China or west of China, the Middle East. So they had the Islamic peoples and they had the Christian peoples, and they were being coerced to pick a religion. The Islamic people wanted them to convert to Islam. The Christians wanted them to convert to Christianity. But apparently, within some Jewish inspiration, some people on the inside whispered in the king's ear and, let him know that the Jews are the chosen people. So the king of the Khazarians said, and I'm paraphrasing here, he said, aha, we're going to be the Jewish people because we're the chosen people. So that's the story how that all came about. And so they apparently, this Kabbalah theology, religion, witchcraft magic is what I call it so people understand. It's just different variations of probably the shamanistic knowledge that, like I said, that the shamans had in Peru, in Ecuador, in Australia, the Aborigines, the American Indians. Look at the totem poles. All over the world there's evidence of these peoples that could go into trances or take certain drugs and go beyond the veil, that small portion of visible light we can see, and go out into the ether, air, another dimension, another plane, if you will, and see these beings and communicate and get solutions to problems. So with that said, opening, I'll read some of this, and I'm only going to read the prologue on this. I just started reading the book, but the prologue was, interestingly enough, because people do have differences of opinion, and this author is well known, and this was back in 1979 he wrote this book, and he seems to have the same philosophy thinking that I've come up with, which I found interesting. Figure out how to turn my camera. Couldn't figure out how to turn the camera off because I can't see because of the glare. Wonder what that looks like zooming up on my face. UFO contacts and cults. So that's what I'm thinking. I've theorized this after many years of research. Here's some of the stuff in the book. I'm not trying to do audiobooks. I encourage people to go get these books. I'm just trying to resurrect books. People who took the time to write this stuff. Dead by now. And who's out there to say that this book exists and you need to go listen to this guy's, read about his philosophy and his discovery and his research. Jacques Vallée, he's a pretty smart guy. I have other material by him. Alright, here we go. A dream world far off. Nobody ever jumps into the Potomac. I'm just going to read what's here. So the author was talking to some political leaders around the world, in France, the United States, the science advisor to the President of the United States. And according to this author, those people were just as perplexed as everybody else. And as we already know, the presidents and the leaders of the world don't have the power to actually control and change everything. They're controlled by secret intelligence services, CIA, Israeli Secret Service, Mossad, MI6 of Britain. So there's people above them, and they don't get certain materials unless they have a need to know. And many presidents have complained about that. Even George Bush Jr. said, if only I was a king, I could just make decrees. So they didn't like that they had handlers. But again, if they didn't have handlers, they wouldn't be in the presidency or their leadership over in other countries, prime ministers, whatever. Because those secret societies control the purse strings and the power strings and put them there. And if they don't do what they're told, they try to do their own thing, like President John Kennedy in his famous speech, that secret societies are repugnant to the American way of life. And he was going to expose it. And what happens after that? He's dead. And so many other people have been murdered, shut up, imprisoned. And even on some of these videos I've been watching, certain insiders working for the governments, or people who were actually in UFO craft, so they say, were put in prison to shut them up. They wanted to tell everything. So what's the truth? Alright, the military has a double standard. In public, it keeps a stiff upper lip. Whatever they are, say the generals, UFOs cannot possibly pose a threat to the security of the United States. Why is it then that amazed witnesses continue to report the mad scrambling of jet fighters every time a light wanders through the sky? None of the regulations that make it a duty for military personnel to report UFOs, and a crime to talk about them has been withdrawn. So the military duty for military personnel is to report UFOs to their military leaders, but it's a crime to talk about it to the public. Even after the closing of the Air Force's Project Blue Book 10 years ago. So anyways, the author says next, "Yet I am beginning to suspect that the real secret in Washington, the secret that must be kept at all costs, is that the intelligence community knows nothing, although it certainly has files full of tantalizing details nobody has been able to put together yet." Alright, I'm only reading my highlighted portions, as you can see. So, some encouraging words by President Carter electrified groups of people who wanted to find out the inside scoop on UFOs when he asked Jody Powell and science advisor Frank Press to see what could be done. So presidents have tried. So here's a little picture here and a guy drawing a picture of what looks like a spacecraft and some kind of beings. Typical of the thousands of close encounter cases reported in the last 30 years is this sighting in Quadruple, France, which heralded the major wave of sightings in Europe in 1954. The witness, railroad employee Marius de Wilde, saw a craft that had landed and 2 occupants of it. So you got a railroad employee, so he had a steady job, and he saw this stuff and reported it, which there are so many books written about this kind of stuff. What are we to believe? What's really behind it? It says here, several serious researchers in this field question the idea that UFOs are extraterrestrial visitors. So I've been skeptical of that for quite a while after doing quite a bit of research. And I'm only reading my highlighted portions, so if I'm jumping around, I'm jumping around. In the mind of the public, the UFO problem has to do with space, and therefore it is appropriate for NASA to deal with it. I'm also aware of the questionable creation of NASA, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL. Jack Parsons, who was associated with Aleister Crowley, and some other peoples who were into the occult, California. People need to wake up. Everything is not what it seems. If you go look at those badges of the astronauts, they have them on the internet, and other logos for their costumes, their astronaut suits, space suits, whatever, pilot suits. You can see the serpent is there all the time, and all kinds of interesting occult symbolism. If you go read a few books on occult symbolism, Satanism, Luciferian, secret society stuff, it's on all the badges and logos. Kind of crazy. Why? Just for grins? You think it's serious? Some kind of witchcraft, magic? Some kind of praise to some kind of serpent being? Just curious. If UFOs did not have an extraterrestrial cause, if they were not space visitors, then what? I suggested that the phenomenon, or at least its social effects, here's where the key word comes in. Remember, this all came about after World War II, and they've been planning on this new age and new world order for a couple hundred years quite intensely, bringing about World War I and World War II, and then other revolutions, 9/11 even, so that they could make some major moves, like a big chess game. And They have to get people away from God. And in my case, get people away from Jesus. And apparently, even in the Middle East, get those Arabs away from Islam and Muhammad. And I suspect all around the world they want to destroy people's belief systems by apparently other prophets that came along over the thousands of years for these different countries and religions, came from the spirit world, beyond the veil, to teach people how to behave. Giving people, if you've ever taken a course in college, community college or whatever, called comparative religion courses. I took one by an Iranian teacher. And she put on display the commandments for most of the religions. And weirdly enough, they were all very similar. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, and similar things like that. So again, is there a veil? Is there this other dimension? It's not this material, biological creation, which apparently, the way I think, is that we have souls. So this is a gift to live. All the things you see behind me, trees. I went camping this weekend at a major resort with a music festival. And had a great time. Had good food. Listened to great music. The river was raging because it had rained all weekend. But my whole life I've seen a lot of beauty of the world. And I got into my whole research investigation because I could see the intentional destruction of the world. So somebody's trying to take planet Earth with we humans, so it seems, and create a more controlled reality. Which, biblically speaking, they're supposed to microchip people. World War III prophesized or foretold by Albert Pike, author of Morals and Dogma, the Bible for the Freemasons, and so much more evidence. It's in my hundreds of videos that I've already made. Alright. So the social effects of making everybody believe there's aliens out there. Maybe they're planning on invading Earth. President Ronald Reagan, I think in one of his speeches said, wouldn't we all come together as one on planet Earth if there was an alien invasion coming? And then he says something like, but isn't that threat real? So I'm saying, you go back and they even have books I've gone over about the population bomb in 1970. They were worried about overpopulation. Books about the New World Order, Jewish utopia. So the evidence of the pre-planning for all of this is clearly there. So what chess move, and they've been feeding us everything. Threats of plagues, threats of Planet X, threats of earthquakes, Yellowstone blowing up, World War III, nuclear bombs, martial law, FEMA camps, Jade Helm 15, terror threats, all kinds of flus and viruses, and starvation and water shortages, droughts. So they have a huge resource of things to do to blame it on if the people will only buy it. Again, that's one of the reasons I make my videos, so people can wake up and open their eyes and see that behind the curtain, these people are pulling the strings. Might be under the control of a human group. So what if all this is some kind of control under some kind of human group? Like the Illuminati, the Zionists, even the Vatican, which apparently is under the control of the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds control the Vatican's wealth all over the world. And we have secret societies all over the world. A lot of people are aware of this stuff. And apparently, even these days, witchcraft and sorcery and all that satanic stuff, Luciferic stuff, information and cults is becoming quite popular. So what if it's a control from some kind of human secret society groups, not necessarily a government, it says in this book. No analysis of the problem would be complete if it did not address the possibility that a group of unknown persons either controls the phenomenon itself or is using public reaction for its own purposes. A lot of people are aware of MK Ultra, Project Montauk, and many other programs where they're abducting people, even putting them in cages, and all kinds of crazy things with electronics and electricity and drugs, and some pretty horrific stuff if you look into it. So they are gaining a lot of knowledge in these different techniques. So are they becoming more skilled at mind controlling us? And I am aware, I've mentioned this before, but people who don't believe in God or have been taught to hate Christians, you're not going to change their minds. Just like with the Muslims, Islam, you can't convert them from the Islamic religion. They grew up that way, reading the Quran. So they're bitter, and they're definitely opposed to converting to Christianity. People who are Democrats, not all people, but a lot of them are so mind controlled, especially if there's an election going on, and you tell them you're a Republican and you're going to vote for the Republican guy, man, they can get fierce, vicious. And then you step over to the Republican court and you say to some guy, I'm a Democrat. I'm going to vote for the Democratic Party. They can get vicious. It's just too crazy. Their mind control is too imprinted on their minds. And so the stuff that's fed through the media, even probably subliminally now, things you can't even hear with cell phones and Gwen towers, fake radio towers, cell phone towers, HAARP, H-A-A-R-P, and even images on your TV screen that you can't see, but flickering, and other things to mesmerize and hypnotize us. This technology is way out of control. They think they have us. So, are they trying to make us believe that the Galactic Federation is coming to save us? There are gigantic ships parked up there in the sky. The Palladians want to come back and fix things that they broke before. Who are the Palladians? Barbara Manasek and her videos. I've been watching this stuff. So anyways, we know what human beings would do with such power. So if they did have this power, we know what these politicians do now, and world controllers, George Soros, ruining countries' economy by playing the stock market with their money and other things, bragging he's trying to destroy economies. And even Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. Look up and see what he said in Fink's Bar. Prime Minister Sharon of Israel. In his Congress, in a heated argument, some of his people were saying, we can't keep taking the Palestinians' land. We can't keep killing them. The United States will intervene, cut off the money. And Prime Minister Sharon of Israel exclaimed, don't worry about the USA. We control the USA. So you can look that stuff up. So there's so much evidence that these people lose their minds when they get this kind of power, and especially unchecked power. So where is this going to go with the UFO, alien, and mind control technological tools they have? Where's it going to go? So here the author has said, I have seen the effects of power. Believe me, in my years in government. This would be one of the French leaders. If your hypothesis turns out to be the answer, I will jump into this sign without waiting for developments. So this leader in France tells Jacques Vallée, if his hypothesis is correct, that there are these people behind all this controlling it, he's going to jump into the river because we're in trouble. The mood in Washington is far removed from the reality of the phenomenon, which may be scaring farmers in Iowa right now, or playing with high-performance aircraft over Japan, Iran, and Spain. So I do believe that there are intelligences here on Earth right now. Maybe they're remnants of some civilization prior to the Great Flood. But they've had, if you read books on some of the ancient civilizations and other information, people who have researched Atlantis or the Great Flood or the translating the hieroglyphics over there in Egypt, etc. Even the drawings Eric von Däniken found in the Gold of the Gods in Ecuador, and many other places all over the world. The monuments are clear that there was a civilization before the Great Flood. So did some of them survive underground or wherever? And have they just for some reason decided to take humanity into the age of the jets and cell phones and radios and TV and flat screens, and they want to tie everything together, all computerized and monitoring everything we say, everything we do. I've been reading the book by the Israeli intelligence officer, By Way of Deception. Man alive, if they want to track anybody down, they got a system, and they can even tell you where you've been in the last week. So I guess they keep the stuff with your cell phone on some kind of system. And other means, different grocery store cards you use, credit cards, debit cards, facial recognition. So they are fine-tuning this thing. So when you realize that, and you look at the UFO alien issue, you scratch your head and you say, well, wait a minute. Are these so-called Galactic Federation, Palladians, reptoids, reptilians, tall whites, whatever, are they here to come save us? Are they here to intervene with our government, to stop our government from enslaving us? Who is behind the evil, satanic mind control and symbolism everywhere? They even make a TV program that just started last week, this season, Lucifer. And then I told my girlfriend, I said, we have to watch that. She goes, no, that's a horrible show. I said, but I can't talk about it if I don't watch it. I don't want to watch it all the time. I just need to get a firm opinion of it. And even Gotham, which comes at 8 o'clock to 9 and Lucifer's 9 to 10. I said, Lord, this stuff is evil. I know a little bit about psychology. You can't put that stuff in people's minds without causing some kind of effect. Watching Gotham and Lucifer and the bloody viciousness, it's damaging. It leaves an effect. Even with the children. The cartoons. Apparently, if you play the cartoons backwards, there's all kinds of satanic messages. How far has this gone? Where's it going, I guess, is the bigger concern. And what happens when people do wake up? Do they have plan B, where they'll execute something, cause a distraction, nuclear bomb in some city? A threat from the Russians, the Chinese, or the aliens? All right, the three aspects of the UFO problem, page 7. Now, I was reading this prologue here. I said to myself, I don't even need to do the book on this particular video. The prologue has a really, the introduction has a lot of good information, a good conversation, which is what I'm trying to do with these videos. Just let's have a conversation. Let's open the doors to this thinking and ask what if. Fair enough? The topic of unidentified flying objects has always posed a thorny problem of public policy. It has always been approached as a short-term question of public relations. So it just seems that our political leaders just want to keep on just washing things aside. Which, by the way, I've noticed certain things politically by countries all over the world, like Israel, when certain things start to come up as an issue, usually there's a big event over here, over there, to distract everybody, like 911, the day before, Donald Rumsfeld, had some kind of speech or meeting or thing at the Pentagon and said $3 trillion is missing from the budget, the Pentagon. You know, that's an explosive thing, $3 trillion. So what happens the next day? Some people say that's why they had to execute 911 right away. Again, then the issue of the $3 trillion went away. World War I, World War II, false flags as far as I can see. World War I, the USA people were generally pro-German. Hadn't we just had a revolutionary war 100 years earlier with Great Britain? But the people in charge of our world, apparently the Illuminati types, the Zionist Jewish types, the elites, not all Jewish people, and they may not even be Jewish people, these Khazarians who converted, these secret society peoples involved in this Luciferic doctrine, said that a ferry sunk off the coast of Great Britain, and a German U-boat, submarine, sank it and killed 38 Americans. Well, later on, they found out that it didn't really happen. And the same thing with World War II. The United States and the NATO people, wasn't called NATO back then, were arming China and refusing to sell oil and other things to Japan. So they were creating an adverse situation with Japan for some kind of worldly thing. And so that was another deception. It isn't what they told us it was. Like 911, like the moon landings. See, the moon thing was also about programming us to believe in the moon landings. Quite a setup. 911, quite a setup. And I believe they have seriously high advanced technologies, weapons, and mind control tools. So what about the UFO and aliens and Galactic Federation and Ascension and all this new kind of religion they're trying to tell us is here? The New Age, the New World Order. What are we to believe? Alright, so it says here, I first became interested in the sightings during the 1954 wave in Europe. The official position was simply to deny the observations. So they even had UFOs, a whole fleet of them, fly over the White House. You can look it up. I've got the books. We'll be going over the books. So that's why it's important for me to be on this wide category of books I read. Everything from UFOs to secret societies to ancient religion, monuments. I want to read everything, which is what I've been doing, and try to put the whole thing together, because I believe it is all connected. Alright, back to the book. Jacques Vallée, probably saying his first name wrong. I first became interested in the sightings during the 1954 wave in Europe. I said that. I became seriously interested in 1961 when I saw French astronomers, so this guy was into astronomy, erase a magnetic tape on which our satellite tracking team had recorded 11 data points on an unknown flying object, which was not an airplane, a balloon, or a known orbiting craft. People would laugh at us if we reported this, was the answer I was given at the time. So they thought people would laugh at them if they reported these things they were seeing on satellite images. And I'm not buying that anymore, by the way. Oh, the planet won't be able to accept it. The religious people will go crazy. I think it's a convenient lie for them, a convenient excuse to not explain everything. Blame it on us because we can't handle it. Better forget the whole thing. Let us not bring ridicule to the observatory. Let's not confess to the public that there is something we don't know. So maybe they just don't want it. If it is this interdimensional thing, communication with the divine, psychic research has shown that from 1840 to 1940 with the Psychic Research Society of Europe and the Psychic Research Society of the USA. I've got the books. They were doing seances and table wrappings and all this stuff quite heavily from 1840 to 1940. Volumes of books written. But after World War II, it just seemed to have just got shuffled under the rug, quietly hushed away, even ridiculed. The TV program I Dream of Jeannie, Bewitched, they were making fun of this stuff. You think that was just an accident? It's like the TV programming now, Gotham and Lucifer and the movie Hunger Games, Divergent, and so many more. And a lot of very horrific movies and TV programming with vicious blood and gore, murder, and everything. It's mentally ill, sickening. And it does affect the minds, especially the children. There are a lot of people who are not aware. Sitting there glued to the TV. Maybe some wine, some alcohol, some drugs. Pop some pills. Watch this stuff. Who doesn't think that doesn't have an effect? That's not a problem. Who can possibly believe it can't cause problems? Look at the way the world is right now. That's why I thought I would do this book at this time. This is a conversation that's necessary. The what if. What if a lot of stuff in the Bible is actually true? And in the other religions, these prophets. Even Jesus said to the Jews, the Pharisees, in the temple, ye are the killers of your prophets. Like they keep saying, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure this stuff out. People get angry, like I said earlier. You can't talk about religion, Rick. You can't. You're a Christian. You're biased. And I'm saying, no, I'm open-minded. I think they're out there killing the Arabs and the Muslims. Brazil, Argentina, where hasn't there been destruction and mass murder? The American Indians. So I don't think these evil forces are just too particular. I think a lot of we the people are the target. And even when I was reading By Way of Deception, the Israeli intelligence officer Victor, I've showed the book, he says they even have a term for the rest of us non-Jews in their intelligence talk. We're called targets. Target country, Christian country, target people. He's a target. So the friend and foe thing, according to By Way of Deception, it's the Jews, and not all Jews from my point of view, but from their point of view, they don't make the distinction. Although I do know in the Protocols of Zion and other materials, Jewish Utopia, they do make a distinction between the Jews who will not go along. They're going to treat them just like they treat Gentiles. And so you either swear allegiance to this new age, this new world order, or off with your head and go look up the fact, as crazy as it sounds, the government buying 30,000 guillotines. Just that thought alone is enough to kind of disturb the mind that the governments in power would purchase those things, planning on using them. And if I'm right, and people go look it up, what are people going to think then? Are people going to get concerned and go, wow, Rick, Government did buy 30,000. Truck drivers delivering them saw them. Even truckloads of signs saying martial law is in effect. There's pictures on the internet, FEMA camps, fields of coffins. You don't have to be a prophet to see this stuff. Again, what is it? Is it this Luciferian satanic world? Or is it the Galactic Federation? Are some aliens coming here to save us from some aliens who are here to destroy us? Are we going to evolve into these angelic beings and ascend up into the sky? As some of the videos are preaching and teaching. I'm not preaching and teaching, I'm investigating. But go watch some of that ascension material. They're teaching a new religion. And I'm saying the people in charge wouldn't allow it if it was against their goals of the world domination. So they're either for it or against it, and it's prolific all over the internet and organizations everywhere, the school systems. So apparently the New Age and the New World Order elites, the secret society folks, are for this stuff. It's part of their program. And that should concern the rest of us. So anyways, Jacques Vallée says, as an astronomer, other astronomers were erasing information. Well, there we were, a team of professional astronomers, seeing things we couldn't explain. Not only were we denying it, we had destroyed the data. I wanted to know how many of our colleagues were doing the same thing, how many sightings were swept aside, and how many lay dormant in scientific and military files. I'm just reading my highlighted portions. So he went to the French Air Force and later in the U.S. Air Force, and he studied many of the cases. Jacques Vallée, he's got books out there. You can get his books. Again, I'm not trying to do a book review. I'm doing, a audiobook, doing a book review. And I would encourage people to go get this stuff and read it. He wrote a couple of books on the subject to summarize what I had found. There was a real phenomenon there, I concluded, and it might very well originate from outer space. In 1967, at the University of Colorado, as the University of Colorado began spending the $500,000 given to Professor Condon by the Pentagon to study the UFOs. That's the Condon report. It was another whitewash. My interest had begun to shift. What is it, I wondered, that the occupants of the UFOs behave so much like the citizens, of the fairy tales and the elves of ancient folklore? That's interesting. This is an educated man who comes up with that rational thinking. I talked about it a lot in my videos, and it's because I've read a lot of books. I'm able to think like a rational person. Why is the picture we can form of their world so much closer to the medieval concept of Magonia, the magical land above the clouds? And why are UFOs becoming a new religious form? I spent a year researching this angle and emerged with a greater appreciation for the psychic aspects of the phenomena. I could no longer regard the flying saucers as simply some sort of spacecraft or machine, no matter how exotic its propulsion. Alright, so he was working back to my computer. By then I had become a computer scientist, and now he's a computer scientist after being in astronomy. And he continued, he was working with the Advanced Research Projects Agency, and he pursued his UFO studies, trying to find some pattern in the global distribution of sightings. So I've been doing this myself for many years, and I will continue to do it and share my information. The most clear result was that the phenomenon behaved like a conditioning process. The logic of conditioning uses absurdity and confusion to achieve its goal while hiding its mechanism. So absolutely, even with the recent election of President Donald Trump and with Hillary Clinton, that was, as these words say, absurd and confusing. And I think it was intentional to create an absurd situation and confuse all of us, our minds. It just wasn't rational to give us either one. And now we got Jared Kushner, a lot of videos on YouTube and alternate websites, whatever, and even in the Main Street News talking about confirmable issues. But it seems he has tight connections with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, and him and his wife and family are serious Jewish people, even visiting one of the graves of a very famous rabbi who apparently was into all this Jewish prophecy and this new cult stuff. I've got the material. I've been making a long list. I will be making a video and talking about all of that. So what is it? Is it them? Or are there some gigantic spaceships parked up there to come down here, like David Wilcock and Corey Goode talk about, and many others? The cabal is under attack. They're arresting them. They're killing them. They're bombing the underground tunnels. What is it? Are we being saved? Or are we under attack and we don't know it? That's a good choice. I wonder how many people could honestly think about it and feel good tonight. The evidence clearly says, President Donald Trump's been in office, 4 months? 59 missiles a couple weeks ago to Syria. So they're just continuing the game. The mother of all bombs, that's what the newspaper said, mainstream news. Biggest bomb they could drop that wasn't nuclear on Afghanistan, and so much more. So if the train is going down the track, big freight train, and it's this reality behind us, the news, the banksters, and all this stuff, and I don't think anybody can stop that train that's coming. That's why we need to wake up. That's the only way to stop that train. But it's going to bring us this new-aged, enslaved world, microchipped world. Swear allegiance to Lucifer world. Or be beheaded. Or are the Palladians coming to save us? Again, I don't think it's a tough decision which way I believe. I'm not buying it, because if the advanced beings with the advanced social populations, planets all over the universe, why wouldn't they let us know in a more rational way other than this cloak and dagger stuff that we get? Innuendos. It's a deception going on. I am beginning to perceive a coherent picture of the flying saucer phenomena for the first time, now that I am pursuing the idea that UFOs may be a control system. I've got the books. You should see the covers. I've shown them. I'll show them again. They were mind controlling us. They are mind controlling us. And now that I am aware of their link to human consciousness, I still think there is a genuine technology at work here, causing the effects witnesses are describing. So I'm completely convinced that there are some mechanisms in play right now that are monitoring us, even affecting us physically, mentally, socially, destroying families, countries. Even after President Donald Trump got elected, people were organizing, having marches and events all over the country, websites telling you where to check in. And don't build that fence. We're for globalization. The people are calling for their own enslavement. It doesn't make sense to me. Let's say a fairly large town or a city. Would you just have one huge grocery store and one huge gas station? And what if it had an accident? What if it blew up? Then you'd have no grocery store, no gas stations. So you don't do that. You have grocery stores everywhere, gas stations everywhere. And if one of them goes out of business or has a fire or something else, you go to a different one. Make sense? You don't want to be forced into one system. And they're trying to globalize everything. Globalization. And if it crashes, the whole world crashes. So are they building this globalist system just to have that kind of control? Just like they did with the propaganda to bring about World War I and World War II. And all the destruction in the Middle East since 9/11. And fooling all the people about the moon and the Apollo craft. There's too many logical reasons that wasn't possible to go up there 6 or 7 times in 1969. They said they went through the Van Allen belt because they didn't know about it, so it didn't bother them. Now they say they can't go through it because when you leave the protective field of planet Earth's magnetic field, the little cosmic particles would go right through that thin metal and put holes in the astronauts. But don't worry, they went to the moon back then and they didn't have that problem because they didn't know about the Van Allen belt. It's just too illogical. And if they were to build these things to withstand this kind of cosmic radiation from the sun and from outer space, they would have had to have a lead-lined craft. They could have never got it off the Earth back then. It's just too... Go watch the videos. It's 911. Everybody knows that the Arabs in the caves didn't do it. Global warming. Here's President Donald Trump canceling legislation that was enacted during the Obama administration, obviously in this pursuit of this communist world order, the communists, which were the Bolshevik Jewish people, trying to enslave the world, control it, like a gigantic earth workforce, used for their own gain and sustainability and biodiversity. The rest of us will have to live on bread and water and in little tiny cages to save the planet. Just saying the way it is. All right. There are 3 aspects to the UFO problem. The first aspect is physical. This energy is manifested by pulsed light phenomenon. Pulsed light of intense colors, by other forms of electromagnetic radiation, and by microwaves that create distortions to the witness's sense of reality. So they really distort your and my perception of reality to make a lot of these witnesses believe what they were programmed to believe, and it actually didn't happen. So that's physical. The second is psychological. The 3 aspects of the UFO problem, according to Jacques Vallée. What is seen and reported is an image that is the perception of a UFO by human witnesses. Reports of UFOs show all kinds of psychophysiological effects on the witnesses, perceptual distortions, unconscious barriers, mental blocks. Witnesses also show evidence of suggestion and post-hypnotic effects. Exposure to the phenomenon causes visions, hallucinations, psychological effects, and long-term personality changes. The third aspect is social. Belief in the reality of UFOs is spreading rapidly at all levels of society throughout the world. So here's where the game begins. It's like Rabbi Marvin Antelman's 2 books I keep mentioning, and I've read them. I need to read them again, because what I know now will be so helpful for me to reread them and share that material. But years ago, I didn't know as much as I know now, but I still got a lot of very important information out of those books. But to eliminate the opaque, they want to eliminate people's belief in God. Why? Yet again, because when you pray, you communicate to this other world in the ether. Call it heaven, whatever you want to. Dimension, plane, paradigm. It's another kind of reality. It's where we come from. And when this physical, biological body dies, it's where my soul will go back to, I believe. And again, I don't want anybody to get angry at me, and I'm not trying to force anybody to believe that. I'm not preaching any kind of religion. To me, it's just quantum physics. There's doctors out there, many of them, who have seen the out-of-body experience effect. Many doctors and nurses have even written books, seeing that little energy field leave the dead body. Children have died and been brought back to life, talked about the lighted tunnel. There's so many books on this. I've got many of those books. We'll be going over that again. So to me, that's not a question. Even the ancient hieroglyphics talks about it. The mummified Egyptians. The burial ceremonies over there in the vast Russian countryside. Dagons. What do you call it? Dogon? Some kind of round circle with a big stone lid on top. There goes my phone. So clearly, there is a social change taking place all over the planet. And I believe it's all planned. I think they need to get people to stop believing in God. And go with this New Age, New World Order. Transgenderism, pansexualism. Start putting the blame game, making evil people out of decent people. I guess at the end times, one of the prophecies is up will be down, down will be up. 2 plus 2 will be 5. It's going to be whatever they say it is, or you lose your head. Documentaries and major films are being made now by young people of the UFO generation. So this stuff has been in play for quite a while. A lot of people are all set. Stage is set. Just like the anger that Democrats have against Republicans, and the anger the Republicans have against Democrats. Or the propagandized media propaganda frenzy that the American people will have if they demonize Russia, if they demonize China, if they demonize Venezuela, they demonize Iraq, they demonize Iran. They're demonizing everybody. And the people are just going for it. Boom. Turning on like a switch into a zombie. Kill them. Kill them. It's hard to believe that humanity has come to this. Expectations about life in the universe. So meanwhile, with all that going on, expectation about life in the universe have been revolutionized by such belief changes in the public. Political and economic attitudes are changing too. The experience of a close encounter with a UFO is shattering physically and mental ordeal. It is a shattering and physical and mental ordeal. I agree with that. So like I said, I was reading Jacques Vallée prologue. I'm not even finished with it. Maybe I'll make 2 videos on the prologue. I said, this guy wrote this in 1979. I've studied for 13 years, and this is my conclusion. There's a huge deception going on. He figured it out. He was an astronomer. He was a computer scientist. New types of beliefs are promoted. We all know about cults. The social, political, and religious consequences of the experience is enormous if they are considered. Not in the days or weeks following the sighting, but over the time span of a generation. So those many thousands of books that were written on the UFOs and aliens and videos and the stuff going on right now, with Ascension. Again, David Wilcock, only because he's a lot of videos out there and he's becoming very popular. Do I mention him? I watch his videos all the time. And with Corey Good and many other different hosts, lectures, talks, different places over the past few years, people are getting sucked into this cult. Is it real? Why are they trying to destroy Christianity, discredit Jesus, destroy the Islamic religion, destroy all religions worldwide? Why are they giving us the fake global warming, climate change, global cooling, biodiversity, sustainability, terror threats, the earth pole shifting, earthquakes, nuclear war, droughts, flus, plagues, so much more? Could it be that such effects are actually intended? Page 9 on the bottom. Through some process of social conditioning. Could it be that both the believers and the skeptics are being manipulated by what I jokingly call the Higher Intelligence Agency? Is the public being deceived and led to false conclusions by someone who is using the UFO witnesses to propagate revolutionary new ideas? I was reading the Encyclopedia Judaica about the Kabbalah and the Jewish people, and they have always had a tendency to want to be part of or instigate revolutions. And that one issue in one of my videos, I read there that it's one of their prophecies, the Jewish people, that they will control the world and bring about this new order. Concerning? So what's that got to do with UFOs and aliens? Messengers of deception, UFO contacts and cults. So I've got a lot more to read. I think I'll just make this a short video and make another one from this prologue on another day. Everybody simply avoids looking at the problem. Why upset the whole machine? So nobody wants to come to grips with this. Wants to see what the truth might really be. The impact could not be avoided indefinitely. UFOs continue to be seen in large numbers that the public is forcing scientists and the military to examine the issue. So the believability is there. You have all these incidences. They find these burn spots on the ground. So again, I'm just saying, what if it's all a big deception? I'm going to continue going into this. And the new thing that I knew about it before we all did, even with Edgar Casey, with his readings when he went into a trance. But apparently these beings, channelers, these beings in this other world are going through a lot of people, and it's very popular right now, where apparently that's where the information came from for the Phoenix Journals, Hanton, and apparently that's information that David Wilcock and Corey Good talk about. Barbara Manasek with the Palladians. So I just think I need to focus in on that some more and continue to try to connect the dots. So thank you for watching my video. Rick Miracle reported.